empire of oil is burning, the drones are swarming and Putin's army is collapsing from within. Ukrainian strikes are turning Russia's fuel network into ruins, refineries in flames, production halted and chaos spreading across the regions. But Moscow isn't giving up. The Kremlin is switching tactic, flooding Ukrainian skies with hundreds of new drones aimed at scraping the energy grid. And yet inside Russia the truth is impossible to hide. How long can Putin's crumbling empire hold on before it implodes completely? Welcome to Ukraine Today, I'm Zoroslava Kolesnikova and this is the war Russia can no longer win. Ukrainian strikes turn Russia's oil empire into ashes. Russia's oil lifeline is on fire again. Ukrainian long-range drones are hidden deep behind enemy lines, from Bryansk to Tyumen, from Leningrad to Saratov. One after another, the refineries that fuels Putin's war machine are going up in flames. The scale is shocking. Massive fires, shutdowns of key plants and fuel storages spreading across the regions. Moscow's energy superpower is now running on fumes, with production falling and exports collapsing. How many more strikes will it take before Russia's war economy finally grinds to a halt? And can Putin survive when the oil that fleed his regime turns into smoke?
Distances of hundreds or even thousands of kilometers are no obstacle for Ukrainian weaponry. Russian oil refineries
Well, that's clear. The refineries are fucked. That's obvious even without saying it.
key facilities of the military-industrial complex and the Russian war machine.
Honestly, it's a nightmare. Damn, it's getting wild.
And recently, in response to the ongoing shelling of Ukraine's civilian infrastructure, the Ukrainian armed forces have also started targeting Russia's critical infrastructure.
No way, fuck! No way, fuck!
Eric, look.
Where are we going? What a ride! No way, fuck!
When the Kremlin threatens Ukrainians with blackouts, Russians should also prepare for a cold and harsh winter.
If they threaten blackouts, for example, in the capital of Ukraine, the Kremlin should realize that a blackout will also come to the Russian capital.
For a long time, Western allies restricted Ukraine's ability to strike deep into Russian territory, as a result of which Ukraine expanded its own long-range arsenal. According to the head of Ukrainian intelligence, Kyrylo Budanov, today 99% of strikes on Russian oil refineries are carried out with Ukrainian weapons.
At the time when all this started, when people said we were fighting with one hand tied behind our back, I tend to agree with your opinion that this is the correct interpretation of what was happening then. But now we have our own domestic production. It is precisely our domestic production that has given us the ability to use our forces and resources the way we see fit.
The Kremlin understands only the language of force. The best argument in any negotiations with Moscow is a powerful Ukrainian army and defense industry. In particular, the domestic production of long-range drones and missiles with which Ukraine regularly strikes targets in Russia, located thousands of kilometers or more from the front line.
In order to somehow bring this war to a stalemate, to shift it, we need to learn not only to repel enemy attacks on the front line, but also to suppress their logistics and their air force. That's why it became necessary. And I'm not even mentioning the need to strike at Russia's military-industrial enterprises and energy system. This is
Belgorod. There's no electricity anywhere in Belgorod at all.
If the simplest drones to manufacture are used for strikes on Russian oil refineries, jet-powered drones are better suited for targeting military-industrial facilities, like the Polyanitia, Peklo and Bars types. Their technical specifications are not disclosed. Experts suggest that the range of these jet-powered drones is between 500 and 700 kilometers. The main advantage is their low cost compared to cruise missile competitors.
These are the two places that are the most significant. Cities like Moscow and Leningrad, which are the most protected by the Russian Federation's air defense systems, could start getting hit every evening. Bars will be able to reach them, and I believe this should happen systematically.
For dessert, Ukrainian long-range missiles are in store for the occupiers. long-range Neptunes and Flamingos with ranges of 1,000 and 3,000 kilometers respectively. The Ukrainian Pink Bird, in addition to its enormous range, impresses with a warhead weight of about 1,000 kilograms.
Usually the warhead of a modern cruise missile is 450, but at most 500 kilograms. As a rule, almost all missiles have a 450 kilogram warhead. What does a 1-ton warhead provide? When it hits a target, for example, an industrial facility, 2 such missiles can completely disable it for at least a year. That is, there will be a single crater about 20 meters in diameter.
Russian terrorists shelling Ukrainian cities must realize that a mirrored response will come. It will definitely happen.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
Russia changes tactic. Mass drone strikes target Ukrainians' energy grid. The Kremlin is unleashing a new wave of terror. Russia is ramping up its attack on Ukraine's energy infrastructure, deploying hundreds of upgraded drones designed to outsmart air defense. Winter is coming and Moscow is once again trying to freeze Ukraine into submission. But will this new tactic help Russia or expose just how desperate its military has become?
Russia is intensifying its strikes on Ukraine's energy system and changing its attack tactics. Moscow is launching hundreds of drones capable of bypassing air defense systems and equipped with cameras featuring improved targeting.
Russia has turned its strikes on Ukraine's energy infrastructure into a systematic operation aimed not just at temporarily damaging the networks, but at destroying the viability of large areas of the country. On the eve of winter, the goal of the attacks is to deprive regions of heat and electricity, undermine industry, provoke mass emigration, and create political pressure on Kiev, writes The Economist. In
these circumstances, air defense becomes critically important. But this year, Western partners are acting proactively, strengthening Ukraine's skies and energy system before the cold sets in.
We are not just now starting to prepare for this winter period. We began preparations back at the end of the previous winter season.
As early as November, the UK will begin serial production of Ukrainian Octopus air defense drones, a joint project between Kiev and London, designed for the rapid protection of the skies from enemy drones and missiles.
our Ukrainian friends will share their technologies and intellectual property with the UK, and in turn, we will further develop them and produce them on a large scale so that we can deliver to Ukraine every month. Thousands of interceptor drones, said El Carnes, the UK's Deputy Secretary of State for the Armed Forces in Parliament.
These drones will become part of a system called the Air Shield. It will integrate Western air defense systems such as Patriot, Airstream, NASAMS, as well as new mobile units, which Germany and other allies are providing to Ukraine before the start of winter. The first drones will be tested by Ukrainian military personnel. If the tests are successful, production will be expanded, and some of the drones will likely be manufactured directly in Ukraine. At the same time, the UK authorities are expanding their multi-purpose missile production program. It is planned to deliver 5,000 units of this weapon to Ukraine to strengthen its air defense.
We are also announcing an increase in the production program in the UK to provide Ukraine with 5,000 new multi-purpose missiles. This will create new jobs in Belfast and other cities, as well as strengthen Ukraine's air defense for the coming winter.
At the same time, European allies are stepping up their support for Ukraine's energy sector. Germany and other NATO countries are mobilizing resources, from air defense missiles to support for the energy sector, so that Ukraine can withstand the winter and resist attacks on critical infrastructure.
Germany has already paid 390 million euros, with another 30 million to come. We agreed on this in the summer, but today I want to announce that we will invest an additional 30 million. Thus, we are providing a total of 450 million euros. This money will make it possible to acquire the necessary technical equipment to save Ukraine.
In addition, EU countries are preparing a winter support package. To the already provided 3 billion euros, a new guarantee of 800 million has been added for the emergency purchase of gas. This was reported by the EU ambassador to Ukraine, Katarina Maternova. The aid covers the repair of power grids and the supply of generators and transformers. We
have also provided and continue to provide a lot of assistance in the energy sector, not only generators for people and businesses, but also transformer and compressor stations to help restore power grids, gas distribution networks, and compressors that supply gas from storage facilities which have been distributed. We also provide financial support to state-owned enterprises and major energy companies for the repair of their equipment. We also supply more than 2 gigawatts of electricity per day.
Thus, support for Ukraine this winter is reaching a new level, from modern air defense systems to reliable energy supply. And whatever the Kremlin may be planning, Ukraine, together with its allies, is striving not just for tactical success but for strategic success, to withstand the cold, to preserve strength, and to maintain the ability to defend itself.
Russia's army increases, record low contract, sign UPC. Even propaganda can't hide it anymore. Russians don't want to fight. In the second quarter of 2025, the Russian Ministry of Defense recorded the lowest number of signed contracts in the past 2 years. As the front collapses and loses month, the Kremlin faces a grim reality. There are simply no more people willing to die for Putin's war.
Russians do not want to sign contracts with the occupying army. In the second quarter of 2025, the Russian Ministry of Defense signed the lowest number of contracts in the past 2 years.
The entire political structure and the underlying mythology for the Russians themselves has significantly changed over time. But this is absolutely and entirely logical because for several decades, the Russian populace was consistently fed the pervasive idea that their entire lives, their very existence and societal structure were meticulously built around actively opposing the decaying and morally corrupt West, and above all, the formidable United States of America. It was deeply ingrained that the entire geopolitical structure and strategic framework of the Putin regime was fundamentally based upon an unwavering and persistent confrontation with the United States. And now here is Putin happily flying to the States, meeting with President Trump, announcing that they have plenty to discuss, including the Arctic, possibly rare earth elements, issues of nuclear deterrence, and so on and so forth. And right before the eyes of, as Putin calls them, ordinary Russians, Russian propaganda makes a complete 180 turn.
The Russian publication Important Stories reports that the number of contract soldiers has decreased 2.5 times compared to the same period last year.
They're not just going to fight and die in Ukraine for, let's say, signing bonuses or contracts. Their wives and mothers are happy when they receive death benefits. Well, everyone has seen those videos where a mother by default was rejoicing. These are truly horrific scenes. That's it. But at the same time, people are also going to fight because that's how propaganda has fed and raised them.
Despite the decrease in the number of signed contracts, the Kremlin continues to lie about the real pace of replenishing the Russian army. For example, Deputy Chairman of the Russian Security Council Dmitry Medvedev claimed that in the first 6 months of 2025, supposedly 210,000 new contracts were signed. This figure is 1.6 times higher than the numbers derived from Russian budget expenditure data analyzed by journalists.
It should be noted that, according to the SVR, about a quarter of this number is what is called, as they say in Russia, the so-called special contingent among the contract soldiers. Who is included in this group? These are convicts, people who, for example, are accused of crimes and have made deals with the investigation. And into this concept of the special contingent, Russians also include the forced mobilization of citizens of other countries under various pretexts and motivations. Some are first promised jobs at military enterprises with lucrative contracts, while others, for example, in certain Central Asian countries, are immediately promised large sums of money, and people fall for it, so to speak. And in addition, they are also promised Russian citizenship, and some are promised housing.
Despite the decline in mobilization morale, Russians are still managing, albeit with difficulty, to compensate for losses at the front.
For Putin, by and large, it doesn't matter who is sent into the furnace of war to achieve his political goals and ambitions. Whether it's, as he calls them, ordinary Russians, or just some migrant workers, or people who are simply deceived and forced to put on a uniform and sent somewhere near Pokrovsk.
Previously, the Russian Federation was able to maintain a positive balance both through Russian contract soldiers and through the so-called special contingent, which made up to a third of all new recruits. After Putin's rapprochement with the United States, the very country Russians are supposedly fighting against in Ukraine, the propaganda paradigms in people's minds are beginning to dissipate. Not even the large signing bonuses paid for joining the Russian army can stop this.
That's all for today on Ukraine Today. If you believe the truth must be louder than Russian propaganda, like, share and subscribe. Your support helps us expose the Kremlin's lies and keep Ukrainians' voice strong on the global stage. Stay informed, stay strong and stay with Ukraine.